What happened in Brown University just shows that you can reach a peaceful solution between protesters and organizations that they protest in and in their surroundings or in campus like the universities when it comes to Israel. So there have been many protests obviously in US universities, Columbia, the biggest and most famous universities in the US, in protest against the university's investments with Israel and dealings with Israel. And it didn't end well in many of them. You had police violence, police brutality, many attacks, and in many cases, the police allowed Zionist terror groups to attack the protesters and their tents. However, Brown University, so what happened exactly? The students decided to take away the encampment, remove all of the tents, stop the protests, because they reached a deal with the university. What's the deal? We have a vote in October following a proposal from the students about the university's involvement, investment with organizations that the protesters claim are linked with Israel and say they are linked with Israel. And this is a very important move. It's very simple. You have billions in some of these universities, lots of money invested with companies that deal with Israel, and some of them support genocide. And the students are calling for something very basic: divest, take off your investment, don't deal with them. It's very simple. And you do that with country, you do that with Russia at a state level, not at a university level. Obviously, it highlights the hypocrisy again with Russia. But it shows how people can reach a peaceful solution. And I think the other universities in the US and across Europe now should learn from this example of having a deal with the people and dealing with it, finding a solution democratically, finding a solution with the will of the people, going back to the people, because that's the key thing here. Protesters in the street mean there are things that are not going back to the people. In most cases, governments ignore the people. That's why people constantly protest. That's why we have ongoing protests in the US, in Europe, in many countries that are not taking action against Israel and are actively supporting the genocide, part of the genocide cartel. Whereas in a true democracy, you should go back to the people and reach some sort of an agreement. And this needs to be regular, especially with things that the population consider to be very important to them. It directly is related to them, whether it's to do with human rights, whether it's to do with their income, their livelihoods. These things need to go back to the people. So I hope other universities, and I hope that other organizations learn from what happened in Brown University and try and reach similar agreements with the protesters. And maybe it could perhaps set a good example of how things can end peacefully between protesters and the organizations, because both of them have their own interests, obviously. And it's important to reach a solution and not to have constant tensions. However, these tensions will not go away by simply ignoring them and having more brutality and more draconian laws put in place.